Browns losers in Kansas City in their preseason finale, and they lose the game 33-32 on a Cade York blocked kick. So, of course, once again, we have to start our recap video with Cade York. Mary Kay, I had asked you on our podcast on Thursday if there was a scenario where we would be talking about Cade York's job. And, well, lo and behold, we have found that scenario. So you heard from Kevin Stefanski after the game, heard from Cade York after the game. What is your big takeaway about the kicking situation right now?
Did I answer that if he misses another potential game-winning kick?
You might have. You actually might have.
I think I did. And lo and behold, here we are talking about Cade York again. If you're talking about your kicker this much after every single preseason game, there's a problem and there is an issue. And it was the first time after a game that Kevin Stefanski actually hinted at something other than, yes, we have the utmost confidence in Cade York. When I asked him, do you have to at least explore your options, with roster moves coming up and whatnot? And he said, it's something that we will talk through. So he didn't absolutely say no. He didn't say yes, but he left the door open a crack that perhaps maybe they have to take a look at this.
Ashley, you just can't ignore it for much longer. These guys were coming up on Cincinnati on September 10th. There are wins on the line, jobs on the line. If you're not sure about your kicker, you can't just look the other way.
Yeah, I mean, he just does not make it easy. He has not made it easy this preseason. And I think there is still so much the fact that they put so much into him, right? Especially in their draft capital and the fact that they went out and drafted him. But I think with how close scores are in the NFL anymore, it's really hard to just gamble on everything's going to be fine without, I think at the very least, it's a phrase they use a lot. You have to do your due diligence, especially once these roster cuts start happening. If someone ends up out there that you didn't think maybe would end up out there, I think you just really have to be paying attention. I mean, there's the common veteran guys' names that always get thrown out, like Crosby, right? That's one, maybe the most popular one. But I think it's really fair to question at this point, because you can't have him shaky or, dealing with the mentality portion of this. Once the regular season starts, there's too much at stake.
We should also mention he missed an extra point in this game. There was a penalty on it. He was actually injured on the play too, but the kick itself missed pretty badly before the contact happened on that play. So a lot of concerns about Cade York. That wasn't the only thing though in this game, Mary Kay. We got a chance to see the first team offense. Now, granted, it was going against mostly Kansas City second teamers, but what were your impressions of Deshaun Watson and this offense today?
Well, I thought it started out pretty rough. I mean, they fumbled the ball away on, the exchange between Jordan Wilkins and Deshaun. That happened twice. And you wouldn't expect that to happen when you're dealing with Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford, although Jerome hasn't practiced very much. But so that was the opening drive, and then they went 3 and out on their second drive. I thought Deshaun was, a little off in the beginning, but then he kind of pulled it together. He threw a nice touchdown pass to David Njoku. He completed a nice long 53-yarder to Amari Cooper to set up another touchdown. So he did what he needed to do. He pulled it back together. He put 2 touchdowns on the board. It wasn't perfect, but I think once they start game planning and they have everybody at their disposal, I think it will look a lot better.
Yeah, you don't come away blown away, Ashley, but I do think at least it wasn't, at least it wasn't a disaster, right? We're not talking about the offense like we are the kicking game. There were certainly positive signs from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mary Kay talked about it, that 53-yard pass from Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper. That was one of the plays that I highlighted. I think I wrote about it in my story that was just kind of giving my thoughts on that extra long, almost hour-long first quarter that we all sat through. Because to me, it's that play kind of symbolizes so much of what we talk about with Deshaun Watson. And I know I've brought this up recently about that. He's the kind of guy that's he's gonna hold on to that ball to try to make the explosive play. And I think you saw that if you go back and rewatch that 53-yarder there. But yeah, at first I'm like, this is not the best scenario here, especially with those 2 fumbles, which the second one definitely looked like it was Jordan Wilkins' fault. But yeah, it was tough early, and then they kind of did what they needed to do to get out of it.
And Mary Kay, the defense, you've talked about this for years now with this defense, turnovers. Now, again, not against Patrick Mahomes, not against the Kansas City starters, but you feel good about it when they dominate a group of players they are supposed to dominate. And this starting defense looked dominant today for the Browns. One note, though, of course, there was one bad thing. Denzel Ward is now in the concussion protocol. But other than that, a good day for the starting defense.
Yeah, it was a good day for the starting defense. Once again, as you mentioned, and we have to note it, that they were going against the backup. So you would expect that they're going to look good. Myles Garrett did not play in this game, and a couple of other guys. And as you mentioned, there were some injuries. Denzel leaving with the concussion. Some linebackers left for a little while. Jordan Elliott. So we'll update everybody on more of those injuries tomorrow. But yeah, the defense did get those takeaways, and that is what they're going to have to do this year. It's the name of the game, and I think when you're starting to see them in preseason, I think that's going to carry over into the regular season. I think that this team is very geared towards doing that, and they come in bunches, and I think this team is going to find a way to get them.
And again, Ashley, it's just, you like to come away from this feeling like, hey, they did what they were supposed to do against a group of players they were supposed to do it against.
Right. It's that delicate balance of like not wanting to put too much stock into the good, right? Like you're never as good as your best moments and you're never as bad as your worst moments. And I think that definitely applies to this defensive performance. It's great to see them with the takeaways after it was a category they struggled so much with last year. They finished middle of the pack, I think like 15th or whatever in total takeaways last year. So it's good to see that against just them doing what they are supposed to be doing, even though it wasn't the Chiefs starters. And it's just encouraging, I think, at least to see that it's this far along. But it's also like encouraging to see that Jim Schwartz was not all that happy at halftime when he did his interview with News 5 on the sideline and talked about the things that they still have to work on. So it was a very, very Jim Schwartz interview, I think, in my opinion.
And before we go, let's just touch on a couple of those injuries. I mentioned Denzel Ward in the concussion protocol. Mary Kay, you mentioned Jordan Elliott leaving the game. Jordan Kanashik left the game with a knee injury. He was ruled out pretty quickly as well. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on. And of course, the big injury today was Jakeem Grant on the opening kickoff return. Has worked so hard to come back from that Achilles. Now he's dealing with another injury. Was carted off with an air cast. So before we go, what kind of update can you give us here on Saturday, a few hours after the game?
Yeah, I found out after the game that he has what is believed to be a broken patellar. That's basically a broken kneecap. And, if that's the case, I'm told that is not necessarily season ending. But if there's a tear in there as well, that would be season ending. So they're hoping that that's not part of it. And an MRI will confirm whether or not it is truly a broken patellar, but that is what they believe that it is. He was in excruciating pain, and as you mentioned, very, very hard to see him go off like that, knowing what he's been through, what he came back from with the ruptured Achilles last year. I was shocked that he looked as good as he did in this preseason. So fast, so explosive. I mean, you could have 100% put him on your 53 and been rock solid with that. He was going to make this football team.
And Ashley, look, this is a cold world, the NFL. Jakeem Grant's injury, unfortunate, but it could open up a roster spot for someone else.
Yeah, I mean, the common name that gets thrown out there, I think, in that receiver room is what's this going to mean for a guy like Austin Watkins Jr.? But I'm also like, what does it mean for like Demetric Felton, who now suddenly, he looked like he made like at least one big mistake in this game where he missed a blitz pickup. But again, when you talk about return potential with him, he's one of the few guys that I think can handle that they would feel at least okay about it, even if he's not going to make the huge kind of same explosive plays that a Jakeem Grant's going to make. It does give you another option, especially while Jerome Ford is still dealing with that hamstring injury. So it definitely could, I think, open up a spot for a guy that maybe wouldn't have made the 53 otherwise.
Okay, Browns preseason is finally over for preseason games in the books. The next time we do a post-game video, it will be after a real football game on September 10th. We got lots more videos coming your way before that first, though, and also full coverage of today's game, roster cut downs, everything you need to know about this team at cleveland.com/Browns.